Roll call, Dr. Thomas.
President Whitener, let the minutes show that all board members are here tonight.
Thank you. We'll have our moment of silence and proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. I will go ahead and move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Is there any questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 5.0, request to speak to the governing board. It's the opportunity for the public to speak to the board. Mrs. Walker, do we have any requests tonight? Thank you. 6.0, superintendent's report. Dr. Thomason, if you'd like to go ahead and lead us in this section.
Good evening, President Whitener, members of the board. A couple of events we have coming up is that we do have fall sports starting in 2 weeks, so we want to make sure and get that agenda out to all the board members. That'll be coming out in the superintendent's report on Friday. We also have the governing board meeting on August 26th, along with the work study, and Labor Day is coming up on September 7th. That will be a day off for all the employees and students. And then the next board meeting would be September 9th. We would like to discuss at the next board meeting the change of the October 26th board meeting to the October 21st, so we don't have 5 weeks in between. So that'll be coming up on the next board agenda also. And that's it for superintendent's report this week. One last thing. I would like to let the board know that our student enrollment is now up to 11,726. So we're up about 3.3% for the year.
Thank you. Dr. Thomason, Dr. Nance, I'd like to ask a question about the student enrollment numbers. At what point do we look at additional staffing when we, I'm looking specifically at classes of 32?
Mrs. Whitener, members of the board, at this point, all the contingency staffing has been allocated, so I don't know that we have any additional contingency staffing to allocate.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, we have opportunities for board comments. I'd just like to thank everyone for what seems to be in previous years a smooth opening. I wanted to specifically thank the transportation department. I know there were some unexpected hiccups that they had no control over, such as building and construction and road pavement that they weren't aware of. And I can tell you there was some positive responses from a lot of community members of the adjustments and how quickly they adapted, and also with the storms as well, and how maintenance was able and to working with the neighborhoods to get kids to and from school with all the downed trees. So thank you for those who helped welcome our kids the first day back of school.
I'd just like to tag along on that one. Dr. Thomason, as you're out and about in the community at visiting the schools, could you please share with them our appreciation from the staff to the bus drivers to the principals to the teachers? What a wonderful job and how they made this a smooth transition as we open the school year. Okay, please?
Absolutely. I will make sure and pass that information on. I will go even a step further and make sure that I take them a sweet treat as our district theme this year on Friday.
Very good.
President Whitener.
Mr. Hoffman.
So I too would like to thank all of our principals, assistant principals, obviously all of our teachers, administrators, staff. Excellent first couple of weeks of school, aside from a couple of hiccups that the media likes to sensationalize. Other than that, it's been a fantastic start to the school year. And so kudos to everyone. Great job. Also, a couple of specific things. One, Ben in the maintenance department and Principal Mercado for the crosswalk at Santan. Thank you very much. And then also to Dr. Thomason, to Sheila, to Principal Wadawa, Principal Hood, and anyone else, Dr. Thompson, that I've missed, I apologize. There have been some parent issues that have emailed the board, and they have been creatively resolved, and the parents have been happy, and it's the exact type of proactive customer service that we should be offering. And so I just really want to commend anyone involved in those situations for doing an outstanding job.
President Meitner.
Ms. Reese.
Business Partners Breakfast coming up. When is that?
Oh, the
That is coming up next Thursday,
27th?
27th, I believe, next Thursday. 20
I know I have an email on it, but I didn't see it here. And just reiterating, we did have a really good opening to the school year. I attended the Cooley curriculum night last night, and that went really well. There's lots of people there. We got to feel what our kids feel by transitioning classes. You know, Dr. Mallerwine was kind enough to give parents 5 minutes in between classes versus the students who have 4, because we had to go up and down stairs. So, but there was a lot of parents there, and I'm sure Sossman was very similar. Were you as nice? Did you give 5 minutes?
Yeah,
You gave 4 minutes, didn't you? You gave that passing time.
I will say, yeah. There were teachers there asking every parent, do you know where you're going? Do you know where you're going? No, we don't know where we're going. But they were very helpful.
They were very helpful, and I have to say that every single teacher talked about e-alerts, every single teacher talked about Parent View, and every single teacher told them, if you haven't been on Parent View and you don't know how to get on Parent View, to go to the office, get your code, and get signed up. So at this point, anyone who was there should know about Parent View and e-alerts. So it was very, very informative. So it was good to see that many parents out. So.
Yes. I did know there was a neighboring school that was giving extra credit to kids if their parents came to curriculum night. I won't name any names, but I know we had a lot of parents at our curriculum nights, even our high schools, and I did hear many compliments of how well the middle school and high school curriculum nights, and it's hard to get those parents out there. But and it's being up here for, on the board for quite a few years now, I'd never heard compliments from a high school curriculum night, and I did this year, so congratulations. That was nice to hear. So parents thanking you of what a great and well-run curriculum night that was, and sometimes it's hard because especially when school gets going, you don't think high schooler parents want to go to curriculum night. School's already started, but I hope you guys had a good turnout. Seems like you did. So, and I assume you didn't give extra credit. If you did, you just take it back. All right. At this time, we have our consent agenda items. 7.7, the board was just given the job description. So at this time, I'll move 7.0, consent agenda items 7.1 through 7.7. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
President Whitener,
Dr.
would it be possible to go back to the awards? The 6.0?
I apologize. Sure. I didn't know. Sorry. We have some awards and recognitions tonight. I apologize.
President Whitener, members of the board, this is the first meeting where the fun begins and we get to begin acknowledging our employees. We always begin the year acknowledging the fourth quarter classified staff winners from the end of last year, so the April, May, and June winners of the Classified Monthly Award. So for April, we'd like to recognize Deborah Hughley. Deborah is from Sossaman Middle School. Deborah is what we could call an old-timer because she's been here since 2006. So that's a while. She began with community ed in Kids Club. She's done site supervisor with Kids Club. She's been a crossing guard and is now in a special ed position. She was in a special ed aide position at Coronado and now is at Sossaman Middle School. And we're going to have Ms. Diab brag about her just a little bit.
I had 2 pages, but I summed it up. President Whitener, members of the board, cabinet, Superintendent Dr. Thomason. Debbie Hughley is an exemplary representative of the SOS. She's been an integral part of the self-contained program at Sossaman. Sorry, I've been sick for the past couple weeks. Because she not only is willing to take on any task, but has creative ideas for hands-on lessons for the students. She offers insight and passion grounded in her over 20 years of experience working with our students. In the general education classroom, special education students are successful because Debbie enthusiastically gets them ready for learning in an environment that is extremely challenging and sometimes overwhelming. She makes content accessible and inspires these students to learn on a daily basis. We are truly lucky to have Debbie Hughley in Higley. She connects with teachers, students, and parents. She engages students in the content in the special education classroom, and she inspires our students to grow academically and socially. She truly lives her passion, has a purpose, and always perseveres. Hashtag Spartan Strong.
If you'd like to join us for a picture. Before I introduce our May winter, I would just take a moment to acknowledge Horace Mann, who's a wonderful business partner of ours, and they provide the certificates and movie tickets for each of the classified employees of the month. So for May, we'd like to introduce Angie Markeling. She is a department secretary for athletics at Williamsfield High School. She started in August of 2008 as a special education aide working at Power Ranch as well as Williamsfield. Then she transferred to attendance specialist back in 2011, department secretary in July 14, and is now in athletics for this 2015 school year. And I would add another little special note that we have a little tab on the website that says like customer service recognition, and it doesn't get clicked on very often at all, but when it does and somebody comments on there, those emails get forwarded to me, and we have had some acknowledgments for Angie through that website. Those are few and far between, but you've been one of them. And so Dr. Wada was going to brag about Angie.
I sure am. President Whitener, members of the governing board, cabinet, Dr. Thomason, Angie Markling embodies what we want from our community here in Higley. As a parent, as an employee, she welcomes every single family that comes through our doors. She goes above and beyond. She's sought out by our staff members, by our students. If she doesn't know the answer, she finds it. She's always willing to help. As a parent, she spends hours and hours on campus beyond her workday. She inspires me because she always can find the humor in the darkest situations. Last year, we had a number of situations where Angie stepped in. She started off as the counseling secretary, then came over as my secretary while Ms. Horton was out on medical leave, and then midway through also became the athletic secretary. So this wonderful woman wore 3 hats at one time and never once said, "Terry, I can't." I won't, because she knew what was at stake for our students. So I'm honored to work with Ms. Markling, and we are honored to have her in Higley. Oh, yeah.
Probably me. And finally, for the month of June, we'd like to acknowledge Tracy Myers. She's our special education record specialist. Started back in August of 2008 as a special education aide at Cortina. Transferred to Higley Traditional Academy in 2009, to Community Ed also in 2009. She worked as our EVIT liaison. Some people don't know that, but she did. And then transferred to the special education department as the record specialist in June 2010. And she's a gem, and Dr. Bruning's going to come up and brag about her a little bit.
President of the board, board members, and everyone here present. It's a great pleasure to recognize Tracy Myers as the June Outstanding Support Staff Member. The amount of work that is required just during the month of June alone in my department is significant. And that means she gathers all of the paperwork. And everyone knows in my department, special education's a lot like the IRS. Everything's got to be signed, dotted, certain check marks, no blanks, and pass muster by someone looking it over carefully. And Tracy is instrumental in that to the nth degree. In fact, gathering all this paperwork and getting it in the month of June and every month that we operate is significant to students. And that's because what she does and uploads to the state means we get the proper funding for our students to help turn around and apply those resources that they greatly need. So without her, we'd be way short on payroll and everything else for the kids. And so for that, we're so grateful. To do that in June and every month, she has to be so organized and have a real work ethic and attention to detail. And she does this with perfection. State and district deadlines are met. Timelines are very tight in our department for the state. And she does this so professionally that not only is it done, but it's pleasantly done. She's a team player. We operate here at the district and in my department in many ways covering each other. She's a front face in the reception area, as an example, when other people take their breaks, and gladly does that to help out. I'll add that she's kind and caring and patient and pleasant, and I think she's outstanding every month, not just June. So I want to say thank you, Tracy.
And thank you, Ms. Sorensen, for always putting those together and bringing those to the board. We appreciate that. this time, there is no 8.0 old business. We can move on to 9.0, action information items. 9.1 is our monthly governing board financial reports. We have June and July. It's information item. If there are any questions or discussion, we can do so at this time. Nine point two is a first read of Amendment Policy AC, Non-Discrimination, Equal Opportunity, and Policy GBA, Equal Employment Opportunity.
President Whitener,
Dr. Thomason.
I would like to thank Board Member Hoffman for bringing to our attention information that would more precisely align all of our policies to the norm for the non-discrimination area. And in policy 9.2, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, and 9.8, we would like to change the policy to read in all those areas to be the same, to put the non-discrimination sex/gender, pregnancy in changing the policy where it says select/gender, including pregnancy, sexual preference, gender identity, and transgender, to all read the same of just sex/gender policy and pregnancy.
And then leaving the other two descriptions, the genetic information and familial status.
Pardon me, no, I left those, I forgot to mention those two, and leaving those out also, just the sex/gender policy, including pregnancy, which would align more precisely to other federal policies and regulations.
Just out of curiosity, what do we mean by familial status? Familial status. You know, like, I wouldn't even know how to describe it.
That comes out of state law, and the Arizona Civil Rights Division, which is a division in the Attorney General's office. They are collecting information, and it would have to do with whether a person came from a family of unmarried parents, perhaps, or parents of the same sex, or just whatever your family situation might be, that can't be used as a criterion.
Okay, I didn't know if it was like divorce, a child of divorce. Okay.
Right, anything about your family. You got too many kids.
So we're okay leaving that out? You said something about state statute.
I think we're okay to leave it out. Not the familial status. We're going to leave that out.
Quick point of
Okay.
That was a little confusing when Superintendent Thomason said that. The familial status and the genetic information would be staying in.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm good.
Okay. Yes, we're leaving pregnancy in, and we're taking out the other things that are within the parentheses. And they were in there because they are enforced by the courts and by the EEOC, even though it's not in a statute. The phrase sex or gender, the term sex or gender, has been determined to include those. I drafted the policy that way simply to give information to the people that have to apply it that those are included. Mr. Hoffman pointed out that it's not in the statute, and I'll certainly agree with that. Whether it's in the policy or not. Pardon?
Linda, it's not only is it not in the federal statute, it's not in the state statute, it's also only in the EEOC's memorandum that was passed in 2012. So I get that there are courts that have upheld it, and this is what we talked about today. I get that there are courts that have upheld it, but there is case law that falls on both sides of this issue, and so for us to include it as a protected class when both the federal government and the state government have not deemed it such doesn't make sense.
Precisely. I drafted it that way, but as long as we train our employees that the word sex or gender includes some of these other characteristics. My job is to keep you out of trouble. I like to stay away from the edge.
You know, and it would be nice if it just says there's no discrimination, period. I mean, come on. What? Why do we have to list 100 things? There's just no discrimination, period.
Well,
so, I mean, and I don't know that, anyways, that's my simple world here, but I do understand specifically, you know, the genetic information, such as someone who has hemophiliac or certain diseases that have to be in consideration. Exactly. You know, and some of those, you know, those necessarily aren't covered under special needs, but some of those key things are important to list. But yeah, just because we have to train, and because of complaints that are filed, we have to follow through.
Certainly.
With training.
And that's what we do. In a couple of those, I mean, all of them really involve expanding the identities of the categories. In a couple of the policies where there is investigation to be done, the regulation that accompanies the policy says how the superintendent will be the compliance officer and so forth. I've put that into the policy itself because it really should be the board that is designating the superintendent. There already is a very good procedure in place for receiving complaints. And the good thing about those procedures is they are all the same, and they even use the same form. So it makes it much simpler for people if they do need to have the administration look into something for them. Are there any other questions about any of those?
Yeah, President Weiner.
Mr. Little.
So I heard at the beginning, so this matches the EEOC federal language. Is that the reason for the change?
What it does is it includes the categories that the courts and the EEOC are extending to bring in. I shouldn't say they're extending, they're really bringing them in under the umbrella. Not protected by statute specifically, it doesn't say that, but
President White.
we have to avoid any discrimination on those bases.
Mr. Hoffman.
So just to clarify, Mr. Little, on your question, were you referring to the amended language or the original language?
The amended language.
So the amended language aligns with federal statute and state statute. The language that was proposed aligned with the EEOC's language, which is regulatory at best, and it's created by unelected bureaucrats. So.
And then carrying that language through to other, harassment and
Right, there are several.
Other discrimination policies.
Yes, and we have, as you can see, there are several policies that are involved there.
Okay.
And we're trying to just make them all say the same so that that same change will be made in all of those. And this is, of course, a first reading, so you have an opportunity to, if there's anything else in them. One of the things, there's some very minor wording changes on a procedure for, it's AC-R, which is the procedure set forth for the investigation of claims. And we're asking that, we get to it now, we're asking then that we just substitute the language that we're putting into AC-R, put that in all of the investigations so that they are identical. They've been adopted at different times, put out by ASBA at different times, and it'll just be a tiny word difference. And too often, if wording is different, people think it makes a big difference, and that they gotta think about, well, if that means this, then so it's easier to have them all be exactly the same. So that's one of the changes.
Ms. Good, was this?
That was 9.3. But
Pardon?
you were just mentioning the AC-R of 9.3, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Good, was this language, was this internally driven or was this ASBA driven? Did they issue an update and this came from that?
Oh,
Or was this just us in-house trying to clean up?
well, what it is a cleanup that has been on the shelf. We got spurred into bringing it forward by the EEOC. A former employee did file a claim against the district 2 years ago, and one of the settlement terms is to look at any policies and procedures that you have and make sure that they're all reflecting the various against unlawful discrimination. So that has affected the timing.
But this was internally driven, not from ASBA. Is that correct?
That's correct. It has nothing to do with ASBA.
It's just making all those discriminatory harassment policies, it's just making them all consistent in wording.
It's making them consistent. Let's see. I think I don't. It's 9 point. I don't know what it is. The last one, the GDN, the supervision. We are adding that into that language there to make it clear that the classified supervisors, are covered, and to get it into a place that's a little closer. I've also added some of the, legal references. I've expanded those beyond what had been in the policies previously.
So 9.2 is the first read. I recommend that we continue and bring that back as a second read. And if there are any further questions or discussion that we can.
And there is one. Mrs. Reese asked. It's
9.3.
It is 9. No,
Do we want to go through each one?
it's GBEB, staff conduct. So that is
9.8.
9 point. I can't get this page turned. Yes, it is 9 point. Well, it isn't on the agenda. Okay. One of them that was supposed to be here is missing. So forget what I said. And Mrs. Reese, I'll make that change when it comes back next time for a first read. I'm sorry. There's just
Were you, the GDN?
No, it's one that it's not. I don't know if it is or not. Maybe I've got a different. Okay. It's not on the one I had. Mine might have been an old one. What I wanted to point out there was that right above where I have that added language in the examples of misconduct, there's the underlined language. And Mrs. Reese said she thought it would be a really good idea if we mentioned bullying, actually using the word. And that physical or verbal abuse, harassment, those really are bullying. Those are the words we use to describe it for students. So what I'm going to propose is to put in the one right above it that it will read physical or verbal abuse, comma, bullying or harassment or threat. So it's going to be just adding that term that has become so common for people to use. And it is defined by the behavior that's prohibited.
No, that's a 9.8. That's a second read. Now, I don't remember. Is what you just added, was that on the first read? Or we've added it as the first read?
And we talked about that.
Okay.
think that we really should put it back to a first read because there was a change that the board had approved previously, but we have added to it this discrimination language. So I think if we treat it as a first read because of the change that was made to it, and then bring it back next time.
Okay, thank you. So 9.2 is a first read with a suggestion of deleting.
Yeah, they're first reads. I had made an error when I did the cover sheets of not putting first or second, and then I changed it, but the first ones got put into your packets. So they're all first read, except that GBEB is identified as a second. But it doesn't really matter whether you put it back as a first, or many policies have more than two times to be before the board for the simple reason that there are changes made to them. So
Okay, so 9.3, 9.4. Well, I want to make sure, besides the changing of deleting a couple of those descriptors, that if there are any other changes that board members might have questions on regarding 9.3 or 9.4, besides those descriptors, if there was any other questions on the 9.3 or 9.4 and 9.5. When it says the superintendent shall be the compliance officer,
yes.
with that newly stated, what was intended or assumed prior to this statement?
The existing regulation starts out by saying that the superintendent will be the compliance officer. And some of the policies that we have scattered around actually say the superintendent will adopt regulations or will set up procedures. And this one just didn't have that. I just put, it really doesn't make anything different. It's just putting the statement where it ought to be, in my way of thinking.
Okay. And on 9.6, under GDN, that's last blue paragraph. We're just adding that in to be more specific.
Yes, there's already some training required, and we've added that training should include, and we'll change that listing of the categories, because that's in here as well, saying that there would be training on those things. So we will take those out, and there weren't legal references in there before, so I just added some because we usually like to know where we can find those things.
9.7, oh, Ms. Reese.
It's good. On the in-service training where it says that there will be training regarding discrimination, I know you want it to be consistent, but do we need to take that out there? Because wouldn't we still want to train them not to discriminate?
Let me put it this way. They're going to get trained on it. In fact, the principals and administrators back there already have been. But whether you want it's up to you whether you want that to be in the policy or not.
I mean, I get Mr. Hoffman's point where, you know, we have it stated on what we will not discriminate against and matching up with the statute there. But that doesn't mean here that we can't take it one step further and train that. because we do want to train our people not to discriminate, like President Whitener said, at all. So, I mean, if we're going to be listing, since we already have some things listed on what we're going to be training on non-discrimination, I don't know if we need to delete it there. If you want consistency, sure, but I think it's important to understand that we are training that.
Let me offer this. Why don't I leave it in there, and when it comes back, you can decide whether you want to put it in or not. Because tonight we're just talking about it, or I can, make it with 2 different versions as you choose. But just as we're making some changes now before it comes back to you, we can do that. And as a board, you can decide which way you want it to be.
Yep. So those will stay first reads. We'll bring those back as a second, including 9.8. 9.7 is also a second read. We're just repealing GBEB. I move that we go ahead and approve that amendment of policy GBEB of 9.8.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any more discussion on the first reads of 9.2 through 9.6?
President Widener.
Mr. Little.
So in my 10-minute crash course on EEOC law here, this might be a minor point, but familial status could be construed as status as parent, which is not covered under EEOC. It's executive order.
No, that's actually that's out of state law. That's out of Title 41, and I can't off the top of my head tell you which section it is. But it's in the civil rights section, and it's a direction to the Civil Rights Division of the Attorney General's office, directing them to get information on that and to be looking for that kind of discrimination as they enforce others.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, do I need to make a motion to bring back 9.8 as a first read? Ms. Good, since it's on the agenda as a second read? Do we need to move on that? I move that the action taken. I move that 9.8 comes back as a second read next board meeting.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 9.9. Something exciting. Discussion, name of new elementary school. Well, that's kind of broad.
President Whitener,
Dr. Nance.
if I may add to that, there's been a group that we are now meeting on a regular basis with the architect and contractors. And if you've driven through the Bridges of Gilbert neighborhood, you've seen there are walls going up and they're moving right along on the construction of that school. So Dr. Fowler and I are meeting with the builders on a regular basis now, and they are working with the time frame in terms of their ordering of materials, and things like logos and names and those kinds of things are all part of what they're doing. And so they're asking us to be able to present to them the name of a school and things like the mascot that they can include in the design by fall break. So the time frame is shrinking for us. We would like to be able to go to the students and the community members who live in the Bridges and will be part of that school community here before fall break and work with the students. And it's always exciting to work with students and get them involved in the process. Those elementary students currently attend Power Ranch Elementary School, and we'd be working with Mrs. Richards and those families and students. But to do that, first we really need to have the name of the school. And so we'd like to ask you to consider giving us some recommendations so that perhaps we could come back 2 weeks from now and have an action item for the official naming of the school. So with that, it's up to you.
It's up to you. You know, just thinking about that, I kind of a reciprocal communication with district administration is, you know, and along with the board is what are opportunities there? Did we want to have highlighted or specific programs? And would that have any effect on the name? Or what if there was a specific vision that was for that school, and would that change the name just besides naming it the Bridges?
And we've begun that conversation with a small group, and Mrs. Redner will expand that to a community group here very soon this fall. But it is a neighborhood school. It is still a neighborhood school regardless of what special programs we put in that. And first and foremost, it is the school for that neighborhood, and it will have boundaries that include the surrounding area. And so, again, the naming of the school is up to you, but first and foremost, we want to keep in mind that it's a neighborhood school. We will be looking at some special program ideas within that school, but it's a neighborhood school.
Dr. Thomason, what has been the history in the past in reference to the process for deciding on a school name?
The history that we've had for the 2 middle schools was we bring information to the community puts out ideas, we bring those ideas, or the board brings ideas up, and then the board decides on the names of those schools, and then we put that out to the contractors to start implementing those ideas.
Well, the mascots have always been determined by, you know, focus groups of kids and parents. I think different schools have had different processes. Centennial was obviously, you know, it was our centennial year, and it worked out that way. And I've seen it both where board has discussed and administration has just had an open conversation like this of just different ideas. But, you know, the colors and the mascots, you know, once we kind of decide on a name, take it back out and let the community members help decide on that. And then in that process comes back to the board just for a matter of approval or any more suggestions. But, you know, I didn't have anything specifically. People have asked me, oh, are there bridges in there? Like, well, no. I don't know why it was called the Bridges, meaning the neighborhood or the developers. But it definitely is similar to a Cortina or a Santan in that it's you know, a neighborhood school after that. I think Cortina, they went back and forth maybe on a Fulton school because it was Fulton, and there actually is a Fulton school now in Chandler. And so sometimes, you know, names of the people that maybe donated the land have been considered. Those that have family history, such as Sossaman and Cooley, and the land that they came from. Mr. Toge, I don't know if you know, if you're aware of that, but that was mostly from those families that land had previously belonged to. So, any ideas?
I was just going to suggest that since we now know exactly what Dr. Nance is looking for and the team is looking for, why don't we shoot any ideas that we may have to them by maybe the end of the weekend, and then you guys can kick those around and maybe bring back some finalists.
I'm quite comfortable with your committee making some recommendation from a community perspective myself.
There is a very big, large Bridges Facebook group.
We have a big sign when you turn off Higley Road as well.
Now, you know, the question being of those parents, and they're going to ask what middle school and high school they're going to go to, too. I don't know if it has any direct impact on the name, meaning they want maybe mini Blackhawks or mini Knights. I don't know.
President White, right now they are part of the Sossaman Middle School Higley High attendance area. I'm not sure you want to change that.
I don't know. No, I don't, not
okay.
Necessarily. But that could be considered too, just in which way they what high school they'll go to.
And certainly that aspect, when we go back to the students, we'll have many ideas coming from students, and we'll have a process we go through to narrow it down and bring back a final student suggestion for you. But it would be much easier to do that if we had the name of the school first. And if that's something we could accomplish 2 weeks from now, I'd love to have some suggestions. If you could, send them to me, and I can work with our group here and bring you back a couple of finalists for consideration as an action item at the next meeting, if that would be all right.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Okay. We will do that.
I just assumed it was going to be the Bridges Elementary School.
Well, for that case, the Bridges better be in one of your suggestions for Ms. Reese.
I just assumed it'd be the Bridges Elementary School. We have Coronado and Coronado. Cortez.
We'll put it on the list.
The only ones that we have different is Centennial, and then our high schools. They're the only ones that are not named after the neighborhoods that they're in. Even our middle schools, even though the land came from them, it's still in Sossaman Estates. It's still in Cooley Station. So I just assumed that's where we would go.
Yeah.
So you have my suggestion.
I have it.
The Bridges Elementary School.
Okay, so please email those to Dr. Nance. And is that something Mrs. Richards could put out to some of those parents? I mean, do you want input on name from parents or no?
Typically, the naming of the school really is the board job to do. I mean, we will certainly reach out to the parents in the community as well as the students that are at Power Ranch and make the rest of that happen by fall break so we can get all the information to the architects and the builders.
Okay, thank you. 10.0, do we have any more future agenda items to add to this list? Oh, I do have one. It's not a necessary agenda item, but something to discuss. Dr. Nance, I'd like our board to take it can be during a work study time that we do, I'm going to just call it a mini tour. We have a couple new board members. I'd like just to do a couple, run-throughs, district warehouse, IT, maintenance, department, community ed, just so our board members are aware of where these things are and what they look like and what they do. And I don't know if that needs to be an agenda item, but I think that would be a good idea for a work study. Questions come up in the community, and all board members need to be able to answer just some things about the structure and organization of our school district.
Absolutely, President Whitener. We'll make sure we have all those individuals here for the work study on that night, so you can ask them individual questions in regards to their pertinent areas.
Oh, I want to drive to those sites. Is that okay?
That's absolutely okay.
I don't know. Does the public need to come with us? We'll take a GoPro. I think it's important for all board members to know what our facilities are and where they are and what they do. So it doesn't have to be a work study. It can be a separate time that we can just arrange.
I believe we would have to do that in groups of 2 in order not to get in trouble with some of the board regulations.
I was going to suggest duct tape. Okay. It was just an idea or suggestion.
President Whitener.
Ms. Reese.
I would like to add a future agenda item for a discussion on our meetings, on perhaps doing a different format, maybe looking at doing one meeting as a work study and another meeting, the second meeting being the actual meeting where action's taken. So I'd like to add that as a future agenda item so that we can look at that and talk about it. So we can try and get in the habit of having our work study items getting the information, letting us kind of digest that, formulate our questions. So when we come back to make decisions on that, we've had time to ask questions and think about things and everything. So I'd like to add that as a future agenda item, that we discuss our format.
Okay. 11.0, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.